Hey there folks, how you doing today? Hope all is well with you. Bear with the noise you hear in the background. There's a storm going on. It's a beautiful, I don't know what this is, some kind of apocalyptic storm that's going on in Texas today. So there is going to be some background racket, just bear with that. Real quick, safety first. We've got an empty magazine, show clear here on this pistol. Put that back in the holster for now. There is some ammunition out here. Rudy, I still haven't got it sent out to you. I was going to try to do it today, but had a run-in this morning that kind of kept me from getting around to it, so it's coming. Don't worry about it. Folks, this is going to be part 2 to a video that I did 2 or 3 weeks ago on some do's and don'ts for a first-time gun buyer. So if you are watching this and that doesn't apply to you, you might want to skip this. If you haven't seen the first part of this series, this portion ties into the other portion and kind of builds where the other portion left off. I'm not going to go over everything that was in the other part of the video. Just understand that at this point we're going to be playing under the assumption that you've already bought a pistol, a holster, a couple of boxes of ammunition, and now you're ready to put it all together and prepare yourself for carrying this weapon. I think in the last video we did 1 through 5. We're going to do 1 through 5 again, this time with an honorable mention, so really it'll be like 1 through 6. Anyway, if you're still here, thanks for sticking around. And again, we're operating under the assumption that the pistol that you purchased is this one right here, which is a Taurus G3C. There are plenty of other good options out there in this price range. This is just an example. Don't get tied up on the semantics of the pistol selected. And bear with me, I wrote this down so that I wouldn't miss anything because I really had some in-depth parts that I wanted to cover on part of this. So, number 1, do. Read the owner's manual. Learn the nomenclature. Read the safety and data warnings. And learn if there's any special considerations to your platform. I'll give you an example. If the weapon you are shooting is a Ruger Max 9, it says in the manual that they do not recommend that you use plus P ammunition in the Ruger Max 9. It's not plus P rated. That's something that you should be aware of in the event that you decided to buy some plus P ammo and shoot in it. Know that the manufacturer doesn't recommend that you do that. On the opposite of that topic, number 1, don't assume that you know everything about the pistol just by picking it up. Even if you are a seasoned gun owner, there can be little nuances and differences from one platform to the next that can elude you unless you read the owner's manual. Alright, moving on, number 2. Number 2, I would say to play with and familiarize yourself with your pistol, ensuring first, of course, that it is unloaded. Nothing helps to familiarize you with a new weapon platform better than playing with it. Ensuring that you know where the slide release is and how it operates, how to manipulate the manual safety. Dry fire practice is really good. Now understand, I know there are some of you out there that are already typing away at the keyboard saying dry firing is bad on firearms, you can damage the firing pins, and to some degree that is correct. Again, that goes back to number 1, where you need to read your manual. Oftentimes pistols, if they are not intended to be dry fired, will say so in the manual. Platforms like this G3C, the Glock platform, and many other modern striker fired pistols all acknowledge the fact that the pistol can and will be at times dry fired. Now, does that mean you want to dry fire your pistol 500 times? Maybe not, although I've done it. In fact, with the Taurus GX4 during the investigation that I did into whether or not I could make mine replicate some of the internet claims of trigger failure, I dry fired that pistol probably at least 1,000 times. I don't recommend that you do that. Just understand that dry firing a modern striker fired pistol is not going to do the same kind of damage that it would do to some of the older style platforms that are out there. Moving on, point number 2, do not play with a loaded gun. If your gun is loaded, don't play with it. You know, this goes back to the 4 basics of firearm safety, and that is treat every gun as if it were loaded. Don't point your gun at anything that you do not intend to destroy. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot it, and know your target and what's behind it. Safety's paramount. You've got to practice safety and discipline. Usually, generally speaking, one safety rule violated by itself probably won't cause too much catastrophe, but it's when you start violating in succession that things really start to go sideways. So don't play with a loaded gun. Point number 3, learn to field strip and clean and lubricate your pistol properly. This should be done before firing it for the first time, and then it should be done after each range session. That doesn't necessarily mean that your gun needs to be stripped down and cleaned every time that it is fired. However, realistically, it should be. So point number 3, don't disassemble your pistol further than what is required for general PCM, preventive care and maintenance. Again, this video is aimed at the novice. We are operating under the assumption that this is the first gun you've ever owned. You just purchased it last week and you're trying to figure out how all this works. Put the roll punches away. Leave the trigger alone. Do not go hacking on it just for the sake of not being able to leave something alone. An example of takedown for proper cleaning and lubrication would be as follows. Remove the source of ammunition. Verify a safe and empty weapon. Point the weapon in a safe direction. Pull the trigger. Back the slide off until you can get to the takedown notch. Pull the takedown lever down. Slide the slide off the front of the gun. Remove your recoil spring assembly. Remove your barrel assembly. Now you have your slide. Clean your breech face. Wipe down your frame rails. Clean the inside, the outside of your barrel, paying close attention to the lockup areas and the feed ramp. Wipe it with a clean, oily cloth when you're done. Your recoil spring is probably good to go most of the time. Use a soft nylon brush to clean the powder fouling out of the inside of the frame. Put 1 drop of oil in all bearing surfaces between frame rails and the slide. Reassembly is largely conducted in reverse order. Function check by again pointing it in a safe direction. Pull the trigger. Operate the slide. Release the trigger. Pull the trigger again, and you can see that we are back in shape with this pistol. While different models are going to operate a little differently, that should give you a basic understanding of field stripping for general maintenance. All right, moving on to number 4, do practice and learn to shoot. Real trigger time with live ammo. Preferably some type of formal training class or concealed carry course. Most gun ranges have a bulletin board listing programs available locally. Constitutional carry considerations are that even if you live in a free state, it is good to attend one of these courses to become familiar with local laws and ordinances concerning lawful carry. How to advise law enforcement that you are armed if you are pulled over. Stand your ground versus must make an attempt to retreat first. Types of ammo allowed for self-defense in your jurisdiction, and so on and so forth. These are all the kind of things that somebody who is new to the game really needs to become acquainted with in their specific area before they start carrying. Now moving on, point number 4, don't think that one trip to the range with 50 rounds is going to square you away. Plan to go practice as often as feasible. preferably at least once a month. At a minimum, you should have a couple hundred rounds and at least one box of whatever type of defensive ammunition you plan to carry through your pistol, fired successfully before carrying it. I realize that many of you out there, like myself, have to make time to do any of this stuff. And I realize that once you are well familiarized with your platform, you may not need to go shoot it once a month. I get that. Again, this is my opinion of guidance given to somebody who is brand new to the game. All right, point number 5, do. Once you are trained and legally able to do so, do carry as often as possible whenever you are legally able to do so. A gun doesn't do you any good sitting on your nightstand when you're not in bed. That's pretty self-explanatory. You bought the gun because you felt the need to protect yourself, so if you don't have it with you, or at least in close proximity, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good. If you're in your vehicle, perhaps it could be in the center console. If you're at work behind the checkout counter, maybe you could leave it in your purse or under the shelf or something like that. Again, those are considerations you have to kind of figure out for your specific circumstance, because everybody's situation is different. But just know that you bought it to carry, so once you've got yourself arranged to do so, do it whenever possible. Moving on to point number 5, don't. Be careful not to carry when and where it's prohibited. You've got to know the laws. I cannot emphasize enough, you have to know your local laws. Remember, concerning private property and businesses, they have the right to say no, and a lot of them do. Most businesses in Texas have posted on the door somewhere by the front door what their position is on your right to carry a weapon into their facility. Know that there are certain places like post office, courthouses, sporting events, concerts, schools, and many other places that it's just off limits. Don't get yourself jammed up for something stupid. The anti-gunners would like nothing more than to be able to make an example out of you. Just be aware also that when it comes to like restaurants, if they serve alcohol, depending on where you're at, some of them have like a 51% rule where if more than 51% of their profits come from food, then it's a restaurant. If more than 51% of their profits come from alcohol, then it's a bar. So you can't carry into a bar, you can carry into a restaurant, but just know if you're sitting there waiting on your burger, you can't have that Shiner box if you're carrying a weapon. I was going to try to limit it with 5, but there was one more point that I thought was really germane to this topic, and I wanted to add it to this video, and that is number 6, our bonus category, do. Do be excited and tell your friends and loved ones about your decision to protect yourself. You're exercising your God-given right to self-preservation. You might be surprised at who will either jump on the bandwagon with you or confide in you that, hey, guess what? I've been carrying a gun all along. Regardless, there is a high likelihood that by doing this, you'll have somebody to take with you as a range buddy when you go to take that concealed carry course. As with the rest of the categories here, we had a do, now we have a don't. Don't do dumb stuff like show off your concealed carry weapon in public. I'm serious.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Some states even have laws against brandishing weapons, and that could be as simple as, hey, check this out. Or even worse, in my opinion, be that guy with the concealed carry badge.
Badges? We don't need no stinking badges. Oh, no.
And while I realize this video is not specifically on concealed carry, I tend to lean towards that as being the more reasonable approach to a first-time owner and carrying a weapon and self-preservation. An exposed weapon, not only do you constantly have to be aware of your circumstance with that weapon, but now you've got to have your head on a swivel and watch everybody else around you because they can see your weapon. Not against open carry, but I think there's a time and a place for it. as somebody who has carried a weapon on their hip in crowds of people for many years, I can tell you, it's a lot easier to get around if nobody else knows you have that weapon. Especially if you're new to the game and you're just starting to figure things out, go the safe route. Don't unnecessarily put yourself at risk with something like this. So while there's certainly more to it, you can't cover everything in a 15-minute video, and I did try to keep this around 15 minutes for your sake. Just understand that if you're at this point and you've committed to buying a weapon and you've taken these steps to get yourself prepared to carry it legally and responsibly, so long as you stay somewhere close, and I'm not saying you have to do this by the book the way I spelled it out, but if you stay somewhat close with this, you'll be off on the right foot and well on your way to lawful and responsible firearm carrying. So until next time, folks, take care. God bless.